Oh, I figured I'd just record and explain everything. I'll make it easy on you, I promise. We are working on Truffles' wig from Chowder. This is her giant mushroom hat. I wanted to go all sorts of crazy with the fabric that I used, so I used this crushed velvet, which I had never used in cosplay. This is the only one excuse I had to use this fabric, so I figured I'd go with it. And then I got some moleskin here. It's almost suede-like, it's really nice. And then this is for her dress. Hairspray, blah blah blah, etc. Okay, so that's what I'm using to cover the mushroom, to give it its appearance. I'm not going to paint it, I'm using fabric. I just, ha ha ha, very funny. Hey look, it's a giant mushroom. Listen. Do you hear that snapping? It's like Rice Krispies, except toxic foam. Yay! Okay, so how you make this giant mushroom thing? It's a giant freaking mushroom, and it's going to be on my head. So I sort of wanted it to be light, you know, not like 10 pounds on my head. I figured that was logical after all. So what I did was I took this, or what used to be, an aerobics ball, an exercise ball, and I stuffed it with great stuff. Great stuff. You suck. Unfortunately, the great stuff wasn't as great or stuffy as I wanted it to be, so it took me 3 cans before I realized I should just use insulation foam to fill to carve out the rest of the mushroom. Great stuff is messy and it doesn't even work that well. The reason you have to carve it out also is because it does heat up and it does cause the exercise ball to warp. So this is all carved into a more circular, even shape. It was a lot lumpier and more tumorish, so I would recommend buying this and then carving it. Stacking it on top of each other and then carving it into a spherical shape, or a hemisphere, which you'll probably only need a hemisphere for the project. So I figured, you know, just use this. It's super light, it's just as carvable as the great stuff, and so much less messy. Well, sticky. Got it all over my finger.
So, after wasting 3 minutes of your time ranting about how, despite my better knowledge, I did a bunch of stupid things, hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. So, now we'll go on and look to see how exactly the construction should be done. While I feel slightly bad for my anti-advertising, let's just be frank and say never, 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 ever, ever use great stuff. It sucks. So instead for this project, I recommend insulation foam or upholstery foam. Those are the 2 options. I also referenced these exact 2 materials in my rabbit's feet tutorial, and so if you look at that tutorial, you can see how they're different. They're both fine for this mushroom hat project though. So take your pick. Note that they are very different price range, so it's really up to you. But once you've got your foam mushroom to the shape you like, you just take the fabrics that you've chosen and you're going to have to sew them into a pattern that will work for a circle. Now for the circular pattern shown here, we have this. This is the general shape of sewing a circle, and as you can see on the strips here, you have to sew them in that way for the fabric to form fit. You can't just stretch it across. I'm sure you could, but it takes a lot of time and effort. So yeah, just sew it up. I used spray adhesive to attach the fabric to my mushroom, and I think that worked really well. Next up would be attaching your stalk and also attaching the mushroom itself onto your head so that it's relatively mobile. So it probably wasn't wise for me to be using super glue and hot glue on my foam projects. Unfortunately, I learned it's a little late, and it caused me a lot of problems and messy cleanup. So for this project, I would recommend Gorilla Glue, Tacky Glue, or Hot Glue. For this project, you're probably going to want to use Gorilla Glue, which, while in a lot of other projects would be inappropriate because it's very messy, hard to sand down, and if you make a mistake with it, it can be sort of a pain in the butt. In this case, it works really well because it doesn't dissolve the foam. So if you're going to go through this process of making this giant mushroom, then you need some sort of way to keep it on your head. And despite the fact that this mushroom is going to be made to be very light, it's still going to be pretty huge and wobble around while you walk. So you're going to need some sort of structure support to hold it up. Now originally we made a harness in the back, which is akin to the harnesses that are made for giant angel wing costumes or cosplays. But we made this harness and then it got burned in my friend's house fire. That, or it was just misplaced when everything was burnt. Being such short notice, we had to find an alternative to our elaborate harness that we had never really had the time to test anyway. So what we did is took some of the clear acrylic piping that we had for the original harness and just sort of shoved it up into the mushroom and had it sticking out as a long pole that I could hold on to and thereby hold up the mushroom as I walked around and posed, as shown in this picture here. It actually worked quite well.